Welcome to Martin Makes Sense of AI, where I sort through the noise and bring you one important AI story every day. Today, the largest open-weight AI model ever released is causing a very strange argument. Kimi K3 is free to download, but almost nobody watching this can actually run it at home. So, is OpenAI becoming real competition, or is this just a very large file with excellent marketing? By the end of this video, you will know what open weights actually give you, why K3 needs data center hardware, why Anthropic answered the debate on the very day the weights arrived, and the 3 practical ways this release could still lower your AI costs without buying a server rack. This story was not hard to find. When I checked Hacker News during research, Kimi K3 on Hugging Face was the #1 item on the best page. Directly below it was Anthropic Chief Executive Dario Amodei explaining his position on open-weight models. Together, the 2 discussions had attracted thousands of votes and comments. On Reddit, the most repeated question was even simpler. Realistically, what kind of machine do I need to use this thing? That question is the story. People hear the word open and imagine a model living privately on a gaming computer, free forever and answerable to nobody. Then they see 2.8 trillion parameters and discover that openness and accessibility are not the same thing. The anxiety underneath the comments is not really about one Chinese model. It is about dependence. If your work, business, or career begins to rely on AI, do you want your price, privacy, access, and even the personality of the tool controlled by 3 or 4 companies? Open weights sound like an escape hatch. K3 shows both why that escape hatch matters and why most of us cannot climb through it alone. Moonshot AI announced Kimi K3 on July 16th and released the full weights and technical report on July 27th. The model card describes a native multimodal mixture of experts system with 2.8 trillion total parameters, 104 billion active for each token, and a context window of up to 1 million tokens. Instead of using every part of the model for every answer, it selects 16 experts from a pool of 896. That is one reason a model this enormous can be served at all. Moonshot also trained the released weights in a 4-bit format called MXFP4. The company reports strong results in long coding sessions, browsing, office work, and tool using agents. But there is an important sentence in its own paper. Overall performance still trails the strongest proprietary models, including Claude Fable 5 and GPT 5.6 Sol. I like that sentence because it is more useful than a victory graphic. The benchmarks on the launch page mix different models, reasoning levels, and agent frameworks. And several results come from Moonshot's own evaluation setup. They are evidence worth examining, not a court verdict. K3 is a serious frontier scale release. That does not make every green bar directly comparable. Now for the calculation that turns excitement into nervous laughter. 4 bits per parameter means roughly half a byte. Multiply that by 2.8 trillion parameters, and the raw weights alone are about 1.4 terabytes. That is before context memory, runtime buffers, networking overhead, and all the machinery required to keep the experts moving quickly. A graphics card with 24 gigabytes of memory would need nearly 58 times its capacity just to hold the raw model. You cannot solve that by closing a few browser tabs. In theory, huge amounts of ordinary system memory or aggressive offloading might load parts of it, but an answer that arrives after your lunch break is not useful production inference. K3 was designed for clusters of data center accelerators and distributed serving engines such as VLLM and SG-Lang. So the honest phrase is not, everyone can run it. It is, anyone with enough infrastructure can attempt to run, modify, and provide it. That difference is enormous. It means the model can be hosted by many competing providers instead of only its creator. A university can study it. A large company can place it inside its own security boundary. Engineers can inspect, quantize, fine-tune, or eventually distill ideas into smaller models. Open weights move control from one vendor to an ecosystem, even when the individual viewer still uses an API. There is a second asterisk. Open weight does not automatically mean open source in the traditional sense. Moonshot published a custom Kimi K3 license. It allows people to use, copy, modify, distribute, and sell the software, including the weights. But it also adds conditions for very large businesses. A model as a service company with more than $20 million in revenue over a consecutive 12-month period needs a separate agreement for commercial use. A commercial product above 100 million monthly users, or above $20 million in monthly revenue, must display the Kimi K3 name prominently. Those limits will never bother a normal viewer or a small developer, but they matter if someone describes the license as completely unrestricted. Here is my practical definition. Weights tell you whether the model can leave the creator's server. The license tells you what you may legally do after it leaves. The hardware tells you whether you can afford to do it. You need all three answers before the word open becomes useful. If clear, evidence-first AI news is what you want. Subscribe to Martin Makes Sense of AI. I will keep reading the model cards and licenses so a headline does not quietly become your business plan. On July 27th, the same date as the weight release, Anthropic chief executive Dario Amodei published a response to the wider argument over Chinese open weight models. He said Anthropic has never advocated a blanket ban and called non-dangerous open weight models a public good. He also argued that once sufficiently capable weights are released, guardrails can be removed, copies cannot be recalled, and harmful use becomes harder to monitor. His proposed answer is mandatory safety testing for sufficiently capable open and closed models, alongside chip controls and action against industrial-scale distillation. There are two tempting but lazy reactions. One is to say, Anthropic only cares about safety. The other is to say Anthropic only cares about protecting Claude. Reality can contain two incentives at once. A company building a closed model may have genuine security concerns and a commercial reason to describe openness as unusually dangerous. Moonshot also has an incentive. Releasing weights turns its technology into a global standard faster than selling access one customer at a time. My view is that the safety question deserves testing, not tribal loyalty, but competition matters too. If regulation makes only the largest companies capable of passing the tests, safety policy can accidentally become a moat. The test should measure dangerous capability, not whether the model comes with a familiar American logo. So what should you actually do? Choice 1. If you are an individual, do not buy hardware for K3. Test the hosted model or a reputable hosted provider with ordinary, non-sensitive tasks. Compare the result, speed, and limits with the subscription you already pay for. The benefit of open competition may arrive as lower prices long before it arrives as a download on your computer. Choice 2. If you run a small business, design your workflow so the model can be replaced. Keep prompts, tools, and data formats outside one vendor's private feature when possible. An OpenAI-compatible interface does not guarantee identical behavior, but it makes price comparison and migration less painful. Use synthetic or non-confidential data for early tests and calculate the whole cost, including hosting, staff time, and reliability, not just token prices. Choice 3. If privacy and local control are the priority, choose a smaller open model that fits the hardware you actually own. A model you can run, update, and audit is more private than a magnificent model you can only reach through somebody else's endpoint. This is the part the launch hype misses. Hey Chip, this immediate consumer product is not K3 itself. It is bargaining power. More providers can host frontier-grade intelligence. More researchers can inspect it, and future smaller models can borrow the ideas. You gain another option, even if you never download a single weight. Here is the verdict. Kimi K3 is open enough to matter too large for almost every home computer, and important precisely because those facts can both be true. Open weights are not a free consumer app. They are a change in who is allowed to build the app, inspect the model, negotiate the price, and decide where the data travels. The biggest risk is not that you fail to install a 2.8 trillion parameter model. It is that you mistake a product label for a plan. Check the weights, the license, the hardware, and the provider before you trust the word open. Martin Makes Sense of AI is here to sort through the latest AI news, separate the evidence from the hype, and explain what it actually means for you. Subscribe for the next important story. And you can also listen to the full episodes in the YouTube podcast on this channel. Tell me in the comments, would you rather use a powerful model through a closed service that is easy, or a smaller open model you genuinely control? That choice may define the next phase of AI more than any benchmark chart.